just the meth making you crazy, dog.
Both of you, get back in the closet. You deserve a fucking ass whooping. All of you, get back in the closet. Go fuck yourself.
How much does it cost for fascism? How much do the taxpayers have to pay for a fascist country?
They're evil. They are actively doing evil. So treat them like the evil that they are.
The right to exist argument has been used now to the point where what it's going to mean is that the Israel you're talking about will include the annexed and illegally occupied West Bank. It's very interesting, the Israeli government has never said where it thinks the border of Israel really ought to be and what it would settle for. And it would be an immense help if it tells us where it thinks Israel's boundaries should be. Every other country does do that.
It's time to stop pretending otherwise. It's time to be ruthless and time to afford them the same amount of grace that they give to their Palestinian victims, because they are only going to get more and more ruthless with their victims if you don't.
Mic check 1 2. Alright, we'll start with just the headlines and then go into more specific stories.
Democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Nermeen Sheikh. Israel's military has declared Gaza City a dangerous combat zone as it ramps up its offensive to seize the
Which just is a euphemism for shoot-to-kill zone.
Gaza Strip's largest urban area. The announcement came as Israel carried out drone, artillery, and fighter jet attacks that killed at least 41 Palestinians since dawn, including children and people searching for food. Meanwhile, UNICEF warns Gaza's starvation crisis, due to Israel's blockade, is growing worse by the day, telling Al Jazeera, quote, "Famine is absolutely ravaging Gaza City." Thousands of the city's residents have been fleeing their homes, most of them heading towards the coast, as Israeli forces attack eastern suburbs.
What should we do? Do we stay here to die? To be broken? My 2 brothers died. My mother was martyred. My cousins were killed before my eyes. What should we do? We keep moving from one place to another until...
Take a look at these images and decide for yourself if the Nakba ever ended.
God above looks upon us.
Earlier today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said Israeli forces in Gaza recovered the body of Ilan Weiss, a 55-year-old Israeli abducted by Hamas in October 2023. 49 hostages remain in Gaza, at least 27 of whom are deceased, according to Israel. On Thursday, Israel's far-right Minister of Finance, Bezalel Smotrich, called for the annexation of the Gaza Strip if Hamas refuses to disarm. Hamas condemned his threat as, quote, an official call to exterminate Palestinians. Israeli forces have arrested at least 9 Palestinians in raids across the occupied West Bank.
And now it's happening in the West Bank. So what is the world going to do? Now is the time to act. If you weren't motivated by the slaughtering of innocents, will you be motivated by the outright dragon breath of evil that we're seeing before our eyes, coming out of the mouths of Bezalel Smotrich? Bezalel Smotrich, however the fuck you say his name. The evil is plain as day. And the motives are from the horse's mouth. If declaring that the Zionist entity, if they're declaring that they're going to commit another genocide or continue their genocide, what else could it take for the world to wake up?
Among those detained is a school principal and the head of a village council. Separately, 2 Palestinians were shot and wounded by Israeli troops during a raid on Nablus, and a Palestinian man was shot in the feet by Israeli settlers east of Nablus. The continuing West Bank violence came as Israeli and Palestinian protesters gathered in Beit Jala for a weekly vigil, demanding an end to Israel's assault on Gaza.
We're here, Israelis and Palestinians from Combatants for Peace, in a joint vigil mourning the children of Gaza, thousands of children that have been killed. What was their crime? What did they deserve? Their futures have been stolen, and we're here to mourn them and to say no more.
More than 1 million people have been displaced in Pakistan after the worst flooding in more than 4 decades. Monsoon rain and the release of water from overflowing dams in India caused 3 major rivers to burst their banks, destroying crops and businesses in the region.
Whoa. This looks like Hurricane Katrina level flooding. Given that it was fed from other water sources, it seems really similar. God.
Region, 3 major monsoon rain and Pakistan after the worst flooding in more than 4 decades. Monsoon rain and the release of water from overflowing dams in India caused 3 major rivers to burst their banks, destroying crops and businesses in the region and flooding more than 1,400 villages in Punjab province. Since June, the floods have killed more than 800 people across the country in Pakistan. Thailand's Constitutional Court has removed Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra from office. She was found guilty of ethics violations over a phone call to Cambodia's former leader. In a leaked recording of the call, she criticized the Thai military's conduct in clashes with Cambodia last month. Paetongtarn is the 5th Prime Minister since 2008 to be removed from office by Thailand's top court. 2 Lebanese soldiers were killed and 2 others were injured Thursday when an Israeli drone exploded in South Lebanon. This comes as Israel attacks Lebanon almost on a daily basis, despite reaching a ceasefire agreement with Hezbollah in November. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council voted unanimously to end the UN's peacekeeping mission in Lebanon over the next 2 years. Currently, about 10,000 peacekeepers are stationed in southern Lebanon. In the past, the UN has accused Israel of firing on its peacekeepers in the region. This comes as the U.S. has been pushing for Hezbollah to disarm. Lebanon will reportedly present a plan this Sunday to encourage Hezbollah to surrender its weapons, after which Israel is expected to offer its counter-proposal to withdraw from Lebanon. In Minneapolis, family members have identified the 2 students killed Wednesday when a shooter fired over 100 rounds through the window of a church at the Annunciation Catholic School as children and other worshippers gathered for the first Mass of the new school year. 8-year-old Fletcher Merkel loved his family, friends, and, quote, any sport he was allowed to play. And 10-year-old Harper Moisky was described as a, quote, bright, joyful, and deeply loved 10-year-old who adored her big sister. 15 other children and 3 adults were wounded in the attack. On Thursday, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said, without evidence, that he was looking into psychiatric medications as a cause of mass shootings. He repeated the unsubstantiated claim in a Fox News interview.
Launching studies on the potential contribution of some of the SSRI drugs and some of the other psychiatric drugs that might be contributing to violence.
Kennedy's comment.
Dude, forget his voice, how grating it might be to listen to. It sounds like his brain is barely fucking working. The brainworm speaking for him, it seems.
Comments drew backlash from Democratic lawmakers. Minnesota Senator Tina Smith wrote on social media, quote, I dare you to go to Annunciation School and tell our grieving community, in effect, guns don't kill kids, antidepressants do. Just shut up. Stop peddling BS. You should be fired, Senator Smith wrote, using the expletive for BS. On Thursday, elected officials gathered at Minneapolis City Hall to demand immediate action on gun control. This is Congressmember Ilhan Omar.
This is something that is simple, a simple ban to make sure people who should not have access to these weapons do not get them, and then cause harm and trauma for generations to come in our communities. It is a simple ask.
Health Secretary RFK Jr. said Thursday his top deputy, Jim O'Neill, will serve as the acting head of the Centers for Disease Control after the White House abruptly fired CDC Director Susan Monares less than a month after she was confirmed by the Senate. Monares is challenging her dismissal. O'Neill is a biotech investor who's worked for the far-right billionaire Peter Thiel and has previously served as a speechwriter in the George W. Bush administration. He has no formal training in medicine. The New York Times is reporting that the Trump administration fired Monares after she declined to fire agency leaders or to accept all recommendations from a vaccine advisory panel stacked by RFK Jr. with anti-vaccine activists. Meanwhile, staff at CDC's headquarters in Atlanta staged a mass walkout Thursday to support senior officials who stepped down in protest against RFK Jr.'s actions. Infectious disease experts Dimitri Daskalakis, Daniel Jernigan, and Deborah Hootie thanked colleagues and promised to keep fighting to protect public health.
Whether it's preventing overdose, chronic disease, stopping Ebola at its source rather than letting it come to this continent, you are the people that protect America.
And what makes us great at CDC is following the science. And so let's get the politics out of public health.
We need Congress to intervene. We need our appropriations. We need to follow science. We need to have ethics back.
Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cookfield filed a federal lawsuit in Washington, D.C. Thursday, challenging what she called President Trump's unprecedented and illegal attempts to fire her. The case is likely to end up at the Supreme Court. President Trump's so-called border czar, Tom Homan, warned Thursday that Immigration and Customs Enforcement will ramp up immigration raids in Los Angeles and other sanctuary cities. Homan's threat came as the White House said it was seeking to use Naval Station Great Lakes, a U.S. military base on the outskirts of Chicago, as a staging ground for the Department of Homeland Security to carry out immigration raids. Meanwhile, the government of Rwanda said Thursday it had accepted 7 immigrants from the United States as part of a third-party deportation deal. The Trump administration is also seeking to deport people to South Sudan and Eswatini, even though they have no connection to those countries. Meanwhile, in Florida, officials are reportedly emptying an immigration detention camp in an Everglades swamp dubbed Alligator Alcatraz by Republicans after a federal judge ordered much of the facility to be closed over environmental violations. The U.S. Air Force is offering full military honors to Ashley Babbitt, the January 6th rioter who was shot by officers as she stormed the U.S. Capitol 4 years ago to protest President Trump's defeat in the 2020 election. This comes as a federal judge offered a refund to another January 6th rioter, Yvonne St. Cyr, who was ordered to pay $2,200 in restitution and fines. She had her felony conviction dropped by Trump in a blanket pardon of January 6th rioters. The Trump administration says the United States will withdraw from a UN review of its human rights record. Under the Universal Periodic Review, all 193 UN member states are required to present their human rights record for peer review every 4.5 years. This is the first time the U.S. or any other UN member has refused to participate. In a statement, the ACLU said, quote, "This move is a chilling attempt to evade accountability, setting a terrible precedent that would only embolden dictators and autocrats and dangerously weaken respect for human rights at home and..."
This is the downfall of human rights that we're seeing. Really, nobody submitted their human rights reviews or human rights assessments? If you've got nothing to hide, you should submit that information. Or allow peer-reviewed data to be gathered
abroad. Republican lawmakers in Texas have advanced a bill to expand abortion restrictions. On Thursday evening, the Texas House of Republicans voted overwhelmingly in favor of House Bill 7, which allows private citizens to sue anyone who manufactures, distributes, mails, or provides abortion medication to or from Texas. Plaintiffs winning their lawsuits would receive a cash bounty of at least $100,000. The bill now heads to Texas's Republican-controlled Senate. In a statement, the ACLU of Texas said the legislation would, quote, "fuel fear among manufacturers and providers nationwide, while encouraging neighbors to police one another's reproductive lives, further isolating pregnant Texans, and punishing the people who care for them." Ahead of the Labor Day weekend, President Trump signed an executive order Thursday stripping union protections from federal employees. Under the order, several government agencies, including NASA, the National Weather Service, and the Office of the Commissioner for Patents, will end their collective bargaining agreements with unions. Trump cast his executive order as critical for protecting national security. On Thursday, members of 30 unions and organizations marched in Washington, D.C. to protest Trump's anti-worker policies. And the Reverend Al Sharpton led hundreds of demonstrators for the March on Wall Street Thursday to protest President Trump's assault on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and his attempts to control Democratic-led cities led by black mayors. New York State Assemblyman and mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani marched alongside Reverend Sharpton and Martin Luther King III. The other mayoral candidates, Governor Andrew Cuomo and Mayor Eric Adams, did not attend the march. This is Zohran Mamdani addressing the crowd in Lower Manhattan.
As we stand here in the wealthiest city, in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, as we stand here by Wall Street, where last year they had more than $40 billion in bonuses, we ask ourselves, how is it that 1 in 4 New Yorkers are still living in poverty? We ask ourselves, how is it that we have still yet to answer the question that Dr. King posed all those decades ago? Because what he said then and what we must answer now is, what good is it to have the right to sit at a lunch counter if you can't afford to buy a hamburger?
That was Zohran Mamdani speaking at a march Thursday.
Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video.
Israel says it retrieved the bodies of 2 Israeli captives in Gaza. Security Council votes to disband UN's interim force in Lebanon, as Israel killed 2 Lebanese soldiers in the Ras An Nakura area of southern Lebanon. U.S. to spearhead gang suppression force in Haiti. Pakistan evacuates over 1 million people amid historic floods. Yemen is subject to more Israeli strikes. At least 24 people have been killed and dozens of others were wounded in El Fasher, a city in Sudan's western Darfur region, after an attack by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. Medicare to pilot an AI-driven program requiring prior approval for certain procedures. Microsoft fires 4 workers who protested against the firm's ties to Israel. At least 51 Palestinians have been killed across Gaza since dawn today, including at least 7 seeking aid, according to Al Jazeera.
To a special Electronic Intifada newscast for Friday, August 29th. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Nora Barrows-Friedman with my colleague Tamara Nassar. It's day 693 of Israel's genocide in Gaza. Here's a brief summary of some of the latest developments this week in Palestine. Israel has killed at least 475 Palestinians and injured nearly 2,200 between August 20th and August 27th, according to official records from the Ministry of Health in Gaza. The Israeli army has continued to destroy entire city blocks in Gaza City and other areas in northern Gaza in relentless bombing and demolition operations across the south, east, and north of the city, advancing from 3 axes toward the city's center in a campaign of comprehensive destruction and systematic erasure, according to Euromed Human Rights Monitor. This escalation marks a new phase of the genocide against Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, ongoing for 23 months, Euromed says. Quote, this assault follows the Israeli army's official announcement of Operation Gideon's Chariots 2 on August 20th, with its preliminary and initial stages already underway. Over 1 million people are now trapped in less than 30% of Gaza City, all facing the threat of forced displacement to the south, under a plan designed to erase the city, inflict systematic destruction, and establish full military control. Israel has been using bomb-carrying drones as well as remote-controlled armored vehicles packed with tons of explosives to obliterate residential buildings and homes. Footage of a lethal quadcopter drone was recorded by civil defense worker Mahmoud Salem, east of the Sheikh Radwan neighborhood in Gaza City. Euromed added that, quote, the continued excessive intensity of Israeli attacks combined with the limited capacity and accessibility of the few functioning hospitals and the absence of basic civil defense capabilities and field coverage makes accurate documentation of casualties impossible. The actual death toll is almost certainly far higher than what has been announced or recorded to date, they say. These practices are inflicting catastrophic and irreversible consequences on hundreds of thousands of civilians already enduring starvation and displacement. They are subjected to daily bombings and killings as their city is erased block by block before their eyes, while the international community remains inactive and silent in the face of one of the most heinous crimes of genocide in modern history, the rights group adds. Alam Hijazi filmed footage of the complete destruction of Al-Istijaba Mosque in Asabra neighborhood, one of the most crowded areas in southern Gaza City. Attacks this week were carried out on the tents of displaced Palestinian families, including in the Al-Mawasi area in western Gaza. An attack on Tuesday, August 26th, on tent shelters in Al-Mawasi killed a young girl, Duri Lafi. A few days before, on August 23rd, Al-Mawasi tent shelters were also bombed. Journalist Ahmed Al-Najjar reported that 17 displaced Palestinians, including 6 children, were slaughtered by Israel's bombing of makeshift tents at dawn, areas that the Israeli army has previously designated as so-called safe zones, but has routinely bombed and attacked. On Monday, August 25th, at about 10 o'clock in the morning, Israel bombed the Nasser medical complex in a so-called double-tap strike, killing at least 22 people, including rescue workers and 5 journalists. The strikes targeted the 4th floor of the emergency building, first killing Reuters cameraman Hussam al-Masri and at least 1 other civilian, as rescue workers searched for survivors. And as journalists documented the aftermath of al-Masri's assassination, Israel targeted the area again, killing and wounding the civil defense workers and 4 other journalists. The attack was captured live on video by journalists filming across the street.
لا حصل الآن خليك يا الله راح الدفاع المدني قتلوا الناس راح الدفاع المدني قتلوا الناس استهداف كبير الآن كما تشاهدون في هذه الصورة تدمير كبير قصف عنيف جدا يعني الصورة الآن.
In addition to Hussam al-Masri, Israel assassinated Mohammed Salama, an Al Jazeera photographer and reporter for Middle East Eye, Mariam Abu Daqqa, a journalist working with the Independent Arabic and the Associated Press, Muaz Abu Taha, a freelance journalist, and Ahmed Abu Aziz, a freelancer who also worked with Middle East Eye. Civil defense firefighter Abdullah al-Sha'ir and other civilians were also killed. At least 10 others, including journalists and civil defense workers, were injured. Euromed Human Rights Monitor's field team, quote, reported seeing an Israeli surveillance drone flying at low altitude over Nasser Medical Complex before the attack, providing further evidence that it was deliberate and intelligence-guided, with precise information collected about the site and the victims. The Palestinian civil defense stated after the attack that, quote, this Israeli targeting of our crews was not the first during the ongoing war of extermination. Today marks the 26th time our crews have been targeted in the field of humanitarian work, and the 11th time our crews have been targeted inside their centers and workplaces. By committing this crime, the civil defense added, the occupation forces have rendered the only 2 rescue and ambulance vehicles in Khan Yunis governorate out of service after they were damaged in this bombing. Only the sole fire engine remains in service. With this bombing, the total number of civil defense martyrs has risen to 139 and 343 wounded since the beginning of the war of extermination that the occupation continues to perpetrate against our people in the Gaza Strip. Israel's prime minister and war crimes suspect Benjamin Netanyahu claimed in English on social media that the attack was a, quote, mishap, and that, quote, Israel values the work of journalists, medical staff, and all civilians. But in Hebrew language media, which is not a secret language and can be easily translated into English, Israeli soldiers admitted that the strikes were, quote, approved and coordinated with senior...
Which is not a secret language is such a funny... it's such a funny little... point to add.
Easily translated into English, Israeli soldiers admitted that the strikes were, quote, approved and coordinated with senior command. Soldiers from the Golani unit of the Israeli army demanded an apology from Netanyahu, saying that his apology was insulting and dangerous to their unit commander. The Israeli army also claimed that it was targeting a camera supposedly belonging to resistance fighters. The Gaza government media office repudiated the claim, saying on August 26th that, quote, this camera was clearly visible. It belonged to Reuters photojournalist Hussam al-Masri, who was killed by the occupation in the first raid while he was broadcasting live to the media. Targeting journalists is strictly prohibited under international humanitarian law and constitutes a documented war crime. The media office said that Israel's attempt to craft this false narrative, quote, is merely an extension of an old approach followed in every crime, fabricating pretexts and evidence to evade international prosecution. Its repeated accusations of military activities against hospitals and civilian infrastructure are intended to legitimize their bombing, a complete violation of all international laws. Furthermore, throughout the genocidal war, it has failed to prove its claims and lies that hospitals or civilian infrastructure are linked to military activities. Middle East Eye reported that U.S. contractors at a Gaza Humanitarian Foundation site had detained and interrogated a source of Mohammed Salama, seeking information about the reporter's identity and whereabouts before he was killed in the Khan Yunis bombing at Nasser Medical Complex. The U.S. mercenaries reportedly asked about a specific story that Middle East Eye says Salama worked on anonymously for security reasons. Colleagues of the murdered journalists condemned the way that the Associated Press and Reuters reported on the attacks that killed them, once again giving Israel's claims the benefit of the doubt while not standing behind their employees. Al Jazeera's Hind Khodari said on Tuesday that, quote, the Reuters news agency did not mention in their headline their cameraman who had been working for them for months. In their article, they simply described him as a Reuters contractor. Another journalist was killed in Khan Yunis just hours after the attack on Nasser Medical Complex, bringing the total number of reporters assassinated by Israel on August 25th to 6. Israeli forces killed Hassan Duhan, a journalist and academic who worked as a correspondent for the publication Al Hayat Al Jadida. The Gaza government media office said that he was shot by Israeli forces in Al Mawasi. And on Saturday, August 23rd, Khalid al-Madhoun, who worked as a photojournalist for Palestine TV, was killed by direct fire while working in northern Gaza. 246 journalists and media workers have now been killed by Israel since October 2023. Mariam Abu Daqqa, the photojournalist who was killed at Nasser Medical Complex, wrote a letter to her son Gaith to be published on the occasion of her death. Abu Daqqa wrote, quote, Gaith, you are your mother's heart and soul. I want you to pray for me and not cry over me so I can remain happy. I want you to make me proud, to succeed, to excel, to stand strong, and to become a capable businessman, my love. I want you, my dear, never to forget me. I always did everything to make you happy, to keep you joyful and comfortable, and to give you everything. When you grow up, get married, and have a daughter, name her Mariam after me. You are my love, my heart, my support, my soul, and my son, who always makes me proud and brings me joy with his good reputation. I entrust you, Gaith, to your prayers, your prayers, your prayers, my dear, your mother, Mariam. Mohammed Assad, a photojournalist and longtime contributor to the Electronic Intifada, appealed to the world to stop Israel's genocide and serial attacks against journalists.
This is the last call from Gaza City. For all foreign journalists in the world, please come to Gaza and start covering with us. We don't have any protection. 245 Palestinian journalists killed at the moment. Please come to us and compress in your governments in everywhere and come to Gaza. We don't have any protection. We don't have gasoline in our cars. We have expired vests and wear it. Come to us before the occupation invasion Gaza City in the next month. They will destroy everything here. It will be a lot of mass cries in this place.
That was Mohammed Assad, a photojournalist and longtime contributor to the Electronic Intifada this week. And in related news, Valerie Zink, a writer and photographer who worked for Reuters in Canada, announced hours after the attack on Nasser Medical Complex that she was resigning from her position as a stringer from the news agency in protest of its role, as she says, quote, in justifying and enabling the systematic assassination of 245 journalists in Gaza. I owe my colleagues in Palestine at least this much and so much more. Zink writes, quote, Reuters' willingness to perpetuate Israel's propaganda has not spared their own reporters from Israel's genocide. Western media is directly culpable for creating the conditions in which this can happen, she adds. I have valued the work that I brought to Reuters over the past 8 years, but at this point I can't conceive of wearing this press pass with anything but deep shame and grief. I don't know what it means to begin to honor the courage and sacrifice of the journalists in Gaza, the bravest and best to ever live. But going forward, I will direct whatever contributions I have to offer with that front of mind. That was from photographer Valerie Zink. As Israel's mass destruction of Gaza City accelerates, so does its policy of forced expulsion. Al Jazeera's Hind Khodari said that Israeli forces have been intensifying their airstrikes and quadcopter attacks on Jabalia, north of Gaza City, forcing Palestinians to move. This week, Palestinians were forcibly displaced from their homes in the Saftawi neighborhood of northern Gaza City, following repeated threats and attacks by Israeli forces. The United Nations Humanitarian Office warned on Wednesday that there are simply not enough shelter materials for people who are being displaced. Quote, multiple organizations' attempts to bring shelters into the Strip are being rejected by the Israeli Israeli authorities, even before the supplies are brought into Israel or the occupied Palestinian territory. Partners stress that many tents and tarpaulins have worn out and must urgently be replaced. In addition, high tides overnight have submerged tents on the beach, affecting at least 200 families. Partners also underscore that tents and other shelter equipment must be allowed into all parts of Gaza, including directly to northern Gaza and Gaza City, where they are desperately needed. The Gaza government media office stated on August 24th that the shelter deficit exceeds 96%, leading it to determine that the southern governorates of the Gaza Strip are unable to accommodate 1.3 million forcibly displaced people as Israel exacerbates the humanitarian catastrophe. At the same time, the media office added, quote, "There are no safe spaces for displacement in the southern Gaza Strip as the Israeli occupation army imposes military control over approximately 77% of the Strip's area, making any new displacement nearly impossible and threatening the lives of the displaced." Meanwhile, children and adults are continuing to die of starvation. The Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, or IPC, the international body that monitors malnutrition and starvation, formally determined that Stage 5 famine, the final and most catastrophic stage, is currently unfolding in Gaza. Quote, "As this famine is entirely man-made, it can be halted and reversed," the IPC stated. "The time for debate and hesitation has passed. Starvation is present and is rapidly spreading. There should be no doubt in anyone's mind that an immediate at-scale response is needed. Any further delay, even by days, will result in a totally unacceptable escalation of famine-related mortality." According to the Famine Review Committee, all three criteria for declaring famine have been met. At least 20% of households face extreme lack of food, at least 30% of children suffer from acute malnutrition, and at least 2 out of every 10,000 people die daily from starvation. The Palestinian group Al-Mizan Center for Human Rights stated that, quote, "The current state of..."
I'll be right back.
Starvation and famine was driven by the consistent destruction of food sources, including farmland, agricultural production sites, and the fishing industry, as well as water sources and infrastructure. While this declaration by the IPC is significant and welcomed, Al-Mizan stresses that it must be followed by concrete action from the international community to end famine, starvation, and every other genocidal act that is being carried out by Israel against the Palestinian people in Gaza. Famine has long been rampant in Gaza, and today's declaration only confirms what Al-Mizan has long warned of. Save the Children International's CEO Inger Ashing spoke at the United Nations Security Council this week, saying that clinics in Gaza, quote, "are overwhelmed by need, every bench packed with malnourished children and their mothers. Yet our clinics are almost silent now. Children do not have the strength to speak or even cry out in agony. They lie there emaciated, quite literally wasting away, their tiny bodies overcome by hunger and disease, the medical and specialized nutrition supplies they need all but used up," she said. "A few kilometers away stand ready a sea of supplies, thousands upon thousands of truckloads of life-saving items, all blocked," she said. "These past few weeks, more and more children have shared that they wish to be dead. One child wrote, 'I wish I were in heaven where my mother is. In heaven there is love, there is food and water.'" According to official records from the Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza, as of August 27th, 313 deaths by starvation, including 119 children, have now been documented since October 2023. This includes 248 deaths since July 1st, 2025, of whom 58 were children, and 10 people who died on August 27th alone. Turning to the occupied West Bank, Israeli forces launched 2 massive incursions into Nablus and Ramallah this week as settlers continue to destroy and seize Palestinian agricultural land. On Wednesday, August 27th, nearly 80 Palestinians were injured by live ammunition and tear gas during an Israeli raid into the old city of Nablus. Wafa news agency said the invasion lasted for nearly 14 hours, resulting in 2 detentions and forcing several families to leave their homes, which were then converted into military observation posts. A child was blindfolded and abducted by Israeli soldiers during the invasion. According to local and security sources, dozens of military vehicles raided the city and deployed their troops in its center, placing the old city under siege and conducting a wide-scale invasion campaign. Nearby in Sebastia, also in the northern West Bank, Israeli forces swarmed the village on Tuesday, raiding Palestinian homes and destroying their contents. Israeli soldiers also assaulted residents, ransacked shops, and stole money and goods from them. Sebastia's mayor, Mohammed Azam, told the New Arab that the invasion operation began at the ancient town's archaeological site, where troops expelled shopkeepers and closed tourism kiosks before expanding into the old city. Snipers were deployed on rooftops, dozens of homes were raided, and residents were interrogated in the streets. In the last 5 months, Azam said, Israel has been engaged in intense excavations and digging, and antiquities have been stolen. In May, Israel's parliament approved a multi-million-dollar proposal to turn Sebastia into a Zionist tourist destination, using pseudo-archaeological pretexts and biblical mythology in an attempt to seize the land, with plans to place the site under its so-called Antiquities Authority and build a military watchtower there. Israeli forces launched a raid on Ramallah and nearby Al-Bireh on Tuesday, wounding nearly 60 Palestinians, including a child who was shot in the abdomen. Al Jazeera reported that Israeli snipers positioned themselves on rooftops and soldiers stormed the central vegetable market area, while others fired stun grenades into busy shops. That was in Ramallah earlier this week. Israeli soldiers also raided a currency exchange shop in downtown Ramallah, stealing 1.5 million shekels, or about $450,000, claiming the cash was being used to fund Hamas. Near Ramallah, Israeli forces uprooted approximately 3,000 olive trees in the village of Al-Mugayr this week. The army said that the trees posed a security threat to a main road to an Israeli settlement colony that runs through the village's lands. The deputy head of the village council, Marzouk Abu Naim, told the Wafa news agency that Israeli soldiers had stormed more than 30 homes since dawn on August 23rd, destroying residents' property and vehicles. Israeli settlers also attacked olive tree groves. Palestinian farmers in the Ramallah area, including in Al-Mugayr village, replanted trees that had been uprooted and destroyed by Israeli soldiers and settlers. Wafa news agency reported that hundreds of residents were forced to spend the night in neighboring villages due to the brutal assault on the village and the Israeli-imposed ban on entering or leaving. Last week, Israeli forces closed the two main entrances to the village, preventing entry or exit, including ambulances, while forcing shop owners to shut down and restricting the movement of residents inside the village. Settlers also threatened residents by calling their mobile phones, vowing to kill them and destroy their property. Last year, extremist Israeli minister Itamar Ben-Gvir set up his tent at the eastern entrance to Al-Mugayr, inciting against the village and demanding the displacement of its residents and the demolition and bulldozing of all houses and lands, Wafa added. We've published many features on the electronic intifada in the last week, but we wanted to highlight journalists denounce Israel's attempts to silence the truth by Ohud Nassar, writing from Gaza City. Ohud writes about Israel's targeted assassinations in a suicide drone strike of a group of journalists inside the Al Jazeera tent next to Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City on August 10th. The attack came after the Israeli military made repeated threats against Al Jazeera correspondents Anas Al-Sharif and Mohammed Kureka, who were killed alongside two colleagues, Ibrahim Zahir and Mohammed Nufal, both camera operators. 3 other people who were present were also killed: freelance journalist Mohammed Al-Khaldi, Mu'amin Aliawa, and Saad Jundia, a civilian who happened to be present. Ohud talked to 2 other journalists, Wadi Abu Al-Soud, a reporter with Yemen TV, and Saeed Hasballah, a freelance cameraman with Al Jazeera, who witnessed the attack. She writes, quote, both Al-Soud and Hasballah said that they were in shock after witnessing their friends die in front of them, powerless to save them. It was only 3 hours later I realized I had shrapnel in my back, Al-Soud said. Seeing Anas and Mohammed like that, my nerves collapsed. I didn't even notice my own wounds. Anas and Mohammed were not just colleagues, they were my brothers. My wife has been suffering from a serious illness with no medicine available in Gaza for a week, and both of them had been helping me search for medicine. Hasballah spoke of his bond with Mohammed Kureka. Since the second Israeli invasion of Al-Shifa Hospital in April of last year, they endured siege together. Al-Soud had stood by Mohammed and supported him when Mohammed's mother was killed during the invasion of Al-Shifa. She had gone missing and was found in the street, where Mohammed had to eventually identify his mother's corpse by the way she slept, her nails, and her hair. Still, there is no action from international bodies, and still Israel kills journalists. Nonetheless, journalists in Gaza remain undeterred. Baida Mu'amar, a TV presenter with Palestine TV, told the Electronic Intifada, the language of humanity is our shared language, and we have sworn to deliver the message, even if only one journalist remains alive. Those are excerpts from Journalists Denounce Israel's Attempts to Silence the Truth by Ohud Nassar, a student in education studies writing from Gaza, on electronicintifada.net. And finally, as we always do, we wanted to highlight people expressing joy, determination, and resilience across Palestine. Journalist Mohammed Al-Sha'ir filmed a group of kids playing on the beach, jumping into the waves and cheering each other on, he says, just a few meters away from the Israeli army's position on the shores of Rafah. Quote, in the place closest to danger, they carve out a space of peace, and in the face of death, they carry nothing but hearts beating with life and innocence. That's it for the news roundup. As always, go to electronicintifada.net for much more, especially to read our new features by our brave writers in Gaza. And see you on Thursday, September 4th, on our regular live stream broadcast.
I wanted to highlight this because if there was ever a sign that Israel is falling out of favor with the Democratic Party, here we have a moderate Dem on why he changed his position on Gaza. The Pod Save America soy boy here.
Represents Washington's 9th Congressional District and serves as the ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman Adam Smith, welcome back to Pod Save America.
Well, that's great. Great to be on. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, too. Thank you for doing this. So I want to talk with you this week because on Tuesday, you released a statement calling on the Israeli government to implement a ceasefire in Gaza to massively increase the flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza and to stop the expansion of settlements in the West Bank and settler violence in the West Bank. You said that if Israel does not take these steps, that it is, quote, time for the United States government to stop the sale of some offensive weapons systems.
Okay, so the guy he's interviewing is the moderate Dem, or he's the moderate Dem?
to Israel as leverage. So my question is, what systems are you talking about, and what made you change your mind about blocking these weapon sales?
Sure. I'm not at the moment specific about the weapon systems. I would have supported both of the resolutions of disapproval in the Senate. It's more about using the leverage. I think obviously the focus would be on offensive weapon systems, but we just want to use that leverage to force a change in Israeli policy, to force a change in their calculation, because to date, Netanyahu has been resistant to any pressure. Of course, the Trump administration is putting no pressure, but it's just sort of done what they want. So we have to use that leverage. As I think you well know, we provide over 60% of the weapons that Israel uses. It is a legit leverage point. And what has changed is the facts on the ground have changed in a number of key areas. One, you can't legitimately say that you can accomplish something more militarily against Hamas. Hamas does need to be significantly weakened and taken out of the equation.
All right, enough of that. I did want to show you guys who's going to be at the Riyadh Comedy Festival. I saw this on Secular Talk, but I thought we'd scroll through and just get a good look at them. Russell Peters, I thought you were a man of the people, buddy. Kevin Hart, go fuck yourself. Joe Coy, it's the end of your career. It's probably the more money than you've ever seen in your whole life. Jim Jeffries, you suck. Jimmy Carr is a piece of shit. Gabriel Iglesias, don't you have enough money? Bill Burr, don't you have enough money? Andrew Schultz, expected nothing less. Jessica Kirsten is gonna be there? Dude. Is she a Zionist? The fuck? Whitney Cummings. Melted candle, Whitney Cummings. Owen Benjamin is a piece of shit, but that was the funniest thing he's ever said, was calling Whitney Cummings a melted candle. Aziz Ansari, fuck you. Andrew Santino and Bobby Lee. Yeah, Andrew Santino, Hassan Piker's favorite comedian. God. It's like Justin Bieber saying that Chris D'Elia is his favorite comedian, you know what I mean? Like, two airheads that deserve each other. Nimesh Patel, I feel like I know who he is. Maybe I've seen him on TikTok or YouTube. Pete Davidson. Skeet Davidson. Fucking loser. Which Midtown Manhattan penthouse are you paying rent for now? Sam Morrill, you piece of shit. Tom Segura doesn't need the money. Louis C.K., Mark Norman, Chris Tucker, you fool. Chris DiStefano. Yeah, all you guys who thought that Chris DiStefano was cool and a good guy, yeah, no, he's just as much a piece of shit as Mark Norman. Hannibal Buress probably needs the money because I don't know what the fuck he's been doing with his career. Jimmy, I don't even know who the fuck that is. Oh, Apple's launched its online store and app in Saudi Arabia. Wow. Fucking nauseating. Stand-up comedy is in the shitter right now. I watched Max Blumenthal do stand-up, a journalist do stand-up, and it was better than... I mean, it wasn't great, but it was still more enjoyable than anything that these other comedians are putting out. Bill Burr, you fucking loser.
What chemicals were released from this? Toxic cocktails that rained down from the sky from the fire and explosion.
The response has been, nothing is wrong, nothing to see here, but it's going to be a nightmare.
Hey, it's Jordan. Happy to be joined by Ann Rolfs. You are the director of the
really don't
Louisiana
see shit
Bucket
like this in
Brigade.
mainstream media.
And
It's
unfortunately,
sad.
we're talking because there's been a massive explosion at an oil plant. Residents nearby in Roseland, Louisiana, and even further down are finding soot on their property. You're finding oil sheen in rivers. And nobody seems to know what chemicals were released from this plant, Smitty Supplies, which has a long list of regulatory violations. Even the mayor of Roseland doesn't have a list. Let's start with the background here.
So I know what the rest of us know, which is that it's an oil and lubricants facility. According to press reports, it's had a history of violations, and that is not unlike a lot of other facilities in Louisiana. And if you want to know why, well, just look at what the response has been from our health and safety institutions here in Louisiana. It's to act as if there's no problem, nothing is wrong, nothing to see here. They've never had an explosion where there has actually been a problem. And that is why a company like Smitty's that exploded last Friday has an accident history, because there is no health and safety oversight that is meaningful on any level, including the local, the state, or the feds.
I want to talk about this specific plant because there's a pretty long history of environmental violations. Records show Smitty paid $250,000 in 2024 for oil spill, although company did not admit liability. The oil plant in Roseland, where a midday explosion turned into a massive fire, is a history of environmental regulations in recent years, including a $250,000 fine leveled just to
Only fined $250,000 for an oil spill? That shit's irreversible in a lot of ways. You can clean up a lot of it, but dude, that is less than a slap on the wrist. That is a mere formality, that amount of money. Ridiculous.
years ago. That fine stemmed from an oil spill into a nearby roadside ditch in 2021. Not the only plant that gets a slap on the wrist fine. They're never shut down.
See, no wonder they don't change their behavior, because they can operate at a loss, or no, they can operate at a profit while taking all these on the chin.
There's rarely even a pause, but we've seen what's happened in East Palestine, Ohio. There, Conyers, Georgia, with that chlorine gas that was released from that plant that created pool spas. Obviously, there's been other oil explosions in other cities. I covered a couple months ago a big fire at a lithium battery plant in Central California that sickened people. This stuff's kind of spreading all over the country, yet somehow these toxic mushroom plumes, we keep hearing, oh, you only have to evacuate a mile. Everything's fine. The air is testing fine, even though independent testers, when they test, they find all sorts of things that the EPA isn't testing.
And let's remember who's running the EPA, right? Essentially, the oil industry is running the EPA. We can expect no real assistance from any government agency on any level, given the times that we live in. And this has been the way that it is, decade after decade here in Louisiana. There are explosions like this. We've had the worst oil spill in U.S. history. We've had the worst explosion.
And that lobby also lobbies the media to where you just won't hear about it except from independent voices like Status Quo.
The largest tank explosion in U.S. history. It doesn't matter how extreme or how bad the accident is. The regulators have always said everything's fine, absolutely defying common sense and people's lived experience. And so the way that I think about it is we have this short-term problem, which is this explosion, right? And then, of course, the longer-term problem of no real oversight.
In your experience, what should the people in Roseland be doing right now? How should they be responding?
Well, if they're smelling bad things, they should find a place with better air quality, that's for sure. And what we know is that we can, that the authorities are not protecting us, right? There's no question about that. So as the government official said in the broadcast there, people should be documenting the problem so that they have it if they need a record.
I want to show this also. This is from independent tester Scott Smith, who went down there. He's tested in East Palestine and Flint and other places. Do I understand correctly that there was a town hall last night at a church in Roseland where elected officials and/or government agency officials said there's essentially, quote, nothing to see here, and it is safe for you and your family to return home and be exposed to the contamination that rained down on your properties, in your ponds, in your pools, in your soil, on your pets, in your airspace? Did anyone tell that to this dead frog I found swimming in the, quote, harmless toxic cocktails that rained down from the sky from the fire and explosion? By the way, for anyone that finds dead animals of any kind, if you can, put them in a Ziploc bag. He tested in East Palestine and some other areas. What I find kind of interesting about this is essentially it's the same playbook that repeatedly happens over and over again.
Absolutely.
Even under Democratic presidents. I mean,
let's not pretend. Yeah. Let's not pretend. Yeah. Hello. I mean, East Palestine, who was president then?
Exactly. So it seems like, honestly, a lot of people look at these stories and they're outraged, but they're kind of removed from it because hasn't happened to them yet. But these are happening with more and more consistency and regularity.
And who was on the ground to go and respond to East Palestine? Pete fucking Buttigieg.
Whether it's mines, oil plants, plastics factories, I mean, you name it. What do people have to do nationwide? How do people come together? Because you're starting to see more communities that have had these events come together to try and fight back together.
Yeah, well, I think there are two different rails. One is in the short term, there is a decided attempt among both parties to gut regulations. There's currently this trending idea. I think somebody even wrote a book about the abundance theory, as if that's going to save us. It's just nauseating. In fact, that whole camp is talking about gutting regulations. I really appreciate your wincing when I even mentioned the damn word, because it is now a bipartisan idea to get rid of health and safety protections. What the hell are they thinking? So first off is to protect that, because we need every law we have on the books. And of course we need more, but right now we're playing defense. And then the other point is we need to pivot to a different economy. All right. As disgusting as it is to see Trump and then our own Governor Landry up there saying, we need to invest in fossil fuels and carbon capture and hydrogen and all this mess, they are very clear poster boys for failed economies of the past. And what we need to do is to put all of our energies into something different. Here in Louisiana, what we're saying is let's put our financing into Louisiana small businesses led by people who live here, who care about our planet and our communities, and who won't have the type of businesses that will destroy a river and force people from their homes.
Absolutely, and should end just a national lens. Haven't heard much from the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, represents Louisiana, not this district, but
what do you know?
Want to talk about it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and this is a guy who, we know what he's doing. He's an acolyte to anything that Trump wants. He's got a refinery in his district that has been a terrible problem for years and has done absolutely nothing about it. It's called the Calumet Refinery, and I should clarify, I don't know if it's in his district, but it certainly is in Shreveport, where he is from. And people in the neighborhood near that refinery, I can't even describe. They are very, very sick. It's a very upsetting place to go. The poverty level is very intense. So as a man who pretends to be a Christian, he needs to go and help people in his own backyard. It's, it's disgusting. And we know that it's up to us to make things different.
Absolutely. And if you're watching from Roseland or any of the other affected areas, definitely reach out to me. I've tried to get in contact with residents this morning. I'd like to talk to you. We're hearing folks are having symptoms, respiratory and others. So we'd definitely like to get your story out there, because unfortunately, this isn't getting that much attention in the national media, not surprisingly. So thank you, Ann Rose,
thank you.
Of the
national media are just... I was thinking this earlier, like, even secular talk, they're just reactionaries. They don't really do journalism. This is journalism. That t-shirt goes fucking hard. Oh my god. Oh, it's a Dixie flag. Oh, damn. I've never seen a shirt go harder than this. Oh my god, dude. This is a Black Panther, by the way. I believe.
Fall. We watch him fall. I argue.
Oh, that black American flag is iconic, dude. Sheesh. That is badass. A nation in mourning. You're damn right. You are damn right.
Democracies can fall. We watch them fall. I argue we already are in martial law.
Everything he jokes about, believe what he's saying, because it comes to pass.
He says, "You're not going to be a dictator, are you?"
Ooh, I think I'd like that guy who said, like, I would argue that we already have martial law. Like how I like to say, I would argue we already have World War III. Tell me how it's not World War III right now. Who else has to be invaded for it to be World War III? This is modern warfare. We don't necessarily have to have boots on the ground. A nation doesn't even have to have their own country's boots on the ground to go to war in this modern age. So we can check all the boxes for a global conflict right now.
Because it comes to pass.
He says, "You're not going to be a dictator, are you?" I said, no, other than day one. And you know why I wanted to be a dictator? People are saying maybe we like a dictator.
The illegal occupation of United States territory by the U.S. military is just that. It's illegal. You know what I mean? The president had no right to do that. We're not under a state of emergency where our sovereignty is in danger. Okay, he's pushing a false narrative. I knew this. I was saying this back in March, that he's going to be trying everything he can to start martial law.
Right? How do we define martial law will determine whether you believe martial law is coming or is martial law here. Okay? When you have the federalization of troops, when the president's told law enforcement, do what you want, all right? Whatever you want to do, you can do it. You have full immunity. When you're telling the troops to help ICE agents who, by the way, do not have to identify themselves, who are kidnapping people off the streets, and that's not just me using a hyperbolic word. When you don't identify yourself, you take someone away without identifying the reason, and you put them in a place where nobody knows where they are, that's kidnapping. So when you federalize...
Yes! I love this guy, dude. Yes, dude. You're damn right it's kidnapping. By Gestapo thugs. How are they any different? How are they any different from the KGB or Gestapo?
People created your own private army by way of ICE, who was funded by the big ugly bill to the tune of $148 billion, the third largest funded military in the world now. And you got now uniformed troops out here who are required to assist them. I argue we already are in martial law.
I've been around the world. Cuba.
Oh, here we go. Get a good look at this t-shirt. The hardest t-shirt to ever be through a textile mill.
95, Bosnia 96, Kosovo 99, Iraq 08, Afghanistan 2013. And I can tell you that democracies can fall. We watch them fall. We've seen them fall in the 90s. We've seen them fall in the Balkans. We've seen Miramar and all that. We've seen this play out. And it's playing out here in America.
You send in troops, instead of being praised, they're saying you're trying to take over the republic. These people are sick. Next should be Chicago, because as you all know, Chicago's a killing field right now.
Yeah, these people are sick. You were talking about a speech you made over the weekend that never took place.
What do you think of the way that he sort of started with D.C. and how he's talking about we're going to put him in Chicago and all these other cities and states?
D.C. was easiest because of D.C. is not a state, which is another reason D.C. should be a state. Free D.C., make it a state, D.C. statehood now. But it was too easy for him to find that gray area and circumvent.
No taxation without representation. You live in D.C., you are taxed with no, sitting Congress members or anything that represents you like other states have. You have it's like Puerto Rico or something like that. You're just occupied.
Not him. Let's be clear. This is Stephen Miller. This is the Heritage Foundation. This is Russell Vaught. This is Donald.
But Puerto Rico has even fewer or even more limitations, I think, in their freedoms.
Now, but it was too easy for him to find that gray area and circumvent. And not him. Let's be clear. This is Stephen Miller. This is the Heritage Foundation. This is Russell Vaught. Donald Trump's not smart enough to figure this shit out. But they found a gray area to circumvent putting troops on the ground. The reason the active duty military is out here is because of the Posse Comitatus Act. So the National Guard's that gray area. That's why he did it. So once he gets them out here, drums up the propaganda machine, and gets all of MAGA to say, yes, this is because of crime. Then all he needs to do is point to all the other cities where MAGA believes crime is, and they'll just jump on board with putting the military there. So this was the proving ground because it was the easiest, and it stirred up the propaganda he needed to expand his plan.
That's it. He wants martial law. He wants total control. He wants to be a dictator. Everything he jokes about, believe what he's saying, because it comes to pass. These jackboot thugs known as ICE are doing nothing more than illegally kidnapping people who are here to make our country a better place. My mother's an immigrant. Immigrants built this country and continue to support this country.
This is an intimidation tactic by a man who does not respect the fucking Constitution that we fought for. And that's why, as a veteran, I believe that we are oath-bound to fight. Our democracy is in danger. Our entire way of life is in danger. The American experiment, good, bad, and ugly, is in danger. The fucking Constitution that we fought.
Got to get a screenshot of this guy's shirt.
Immigrants built this country and continue to support this country.
This is an intimidation tactic by a man who does not respect the fucking Constitution that we fought for. And that's why, as a veteran, I believe that we are oath-bound to fight. Our democracy is in danger. Our entire way of life is in danger. The American experiment, good, bad, and ugly, is in danger right now. And it seems like everyone is waiting for someone, looking for the sky, for somebody to come down here and save us. It is up to us. We the people.
Damn. Well said. Dude, there's people on the street, activists, who speak more cogently on issues than elected politicians. It's inspiring, but it's also scary at the same time. Where am I from? Indiana. So I just wanted to touch on this. I was reading this article, and then I noticed the date. I'm like, what the fuck? This is old as fuck. Cool, I'm from the UK, just saw the flag, I thought I'd join, huh? Well, you're in the right place, brother. If you want a free Palestine, you are in the right place. If you want to see the Zionist entity evaporated, you are in good company. But this is a headline that could have been written today, you know. Noticeably absent from U.S. news coverage of Donald Trump's waffling over the release of the Epstein files is any mention of his apparent ties to Israeli intelligence. Of 383 stories unleashed by Trump's broken promise to reveal everything Epstein, only a single article broached ties between Epstein and Israel's intelligence agency, the Mossad, and then tried to undercut it. Oh my god. That's wild. A claim often expressed with anti-Semitic rhetoric. Yeah, sure. So this came out 4 hours ago on Breaking Points. Jeffrey Sachs asserts that Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad agent. Why do you think most of the Western world just ignored the death and brutality in Palestine? Is it money? Are they afraid? The Israel lobby has controlled every United States election since 1950. We are controlled by Israel. As long as a United States president does not pick up the phone and actually apply pressure, Israel owns the United States. Israel's lobbying has ensured that they have installed a president in the United States who aligns with Israel enough to where they won't have to worry about their security and continue to have the United States as an asset. So why have they ignored the death and brutality in Palestine? It might be money, but I think complacency is a universal characteristic a bipartisan characteristic in United States politics. I mean, Hurricane Katrina, we're at the 20th anniversary, and Louisiana is still at risk for another hurricane of that caliber to have that level of destruction again. So the United States doesn't even care about their own people. The United States is like, wait, you're trying to build an ethno-state? That's what we're trying to do too. We've been incarcerating every black man we've seen. We've been deporting every brown person we can find at Home Depot. They're like, oh, you're genociding the Palestinians? Cool. But I did hear something interesting, is who is worse? The Zionist who truly believes that that Israel is a legitimate project, or the people who aren't aligned with Israel but facilitate it, like Stephen Miller or Joe Biden. Because they're just wielding these Zionist freaks as a weapon in the Middle East. I think it's hard to pick. It's hard to pick who's worse.
Files play some role in this. Epstein was a Mossad agent, and there's no doubt that there's blackmail involved in this in some way or another that we don't fully know. How corrupt can America be?
It literally just came out that like an enormous safe the size of a closet was raided, and it contained blackmail material on people. We just don't know the specifics.
Plumbing new depths, basically.
Yeah. Jeffrey Sachs asserted on Breaking Points recently that Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad agent. Let's find out why he thinks that. And he also gets into Israel's overall influence on the United States here.
Is that a Dragon Force t-shirt? Hell yeah, dude.
And why public opinion doesn't exactly matter when it comes to U.S. foreign policy. Let's hear him chime in on this. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
It starts with the fact that in foreign policy, public opinion plays almost no role in the United States in general. That's true across wars. That's true across almost all of the issues that we have of foreign policy. This is executive branch, largely covert. It's very heavily CIA and national security driven rather than any publicly driven decision making. Congress is pretty much useless across the board in foreign policy and has been for a long time. Of course, the Congress is suborned by the military-industrial complex to begin with, by the military contractors, and then there are the specific issues.
Yeah, he's exactly right. Congress defers to the president on all things war, even though the U.S. Constitution confines the power to declare war to Congress alone. That's in Article 1, Section 8, but it's been that way for a long time. He also makes a good point about the long-lasting power centers of the United States, the lobbying interests, AIPAC, the Israel lobby, the military-industrial complex, the CIA, the FBI, the intelligence apparatus, the NSA, all have a perverted incentive structure to drag us into these wars, to fleece the middle class of their money, get it into the pockets of rich contractors, and, conduct empire-building schemes. This is the modern war regime that we're seeing in Washington, D.C. It's why the U.S. is so embroiled in entangling alliances with Ukraine and Israel, trying to basically police the world, but that's putting it lightly. It's trying to, conduct operations that expand hegemony throughout the world. And it's backwards and it's twisted and it's not America first, that's for sure, if your interest is serving the public.
I think he hit it right on the head. It's money. The shorter answer, yeah, it's money. Real estate, land, resources. and they will have the most racist justifications for doing it.
DemocracyNow.org. I'm Nermeen Sheikh in New York with Amy Goodman in Telluride, Colorado. We're continuing our coverage of the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, the 2005 storm that devastated the Gulf Coast, killing more than 1,800 people and forcing over 1 million people to evacuate.
We're joined now in New Orleans by independent journalist Jordan Flaherty, who was in New Orleans when the hurricane hit, returned to the city soon after being evacuated to help with relief.
Who profits with this money? Is it America in general or specific people? Oh, it's definitely just the military-industrial complex, lobbyists, politicians who accept money from lobbyists. It's a way to sell weapons by manufacturing conflicts. Or just committing genocide if you aren't creative enough to manufacture a conflict. Or if you want to do regime change, it's another motivation.
Efforts and to report on what was happening in the streets, particularly to the poor Black communities that were most affected by the hurricane. He's won awards for his reporting on people left behind.
The devastation we're about to see here with Katrina is exactly why the United States government does not care about the lives of the Palestinians, because they don't even care about their own people.
In the New Orleans City Jail after the hurricane, and is the author of Floodlines, Community and Resistance from Katrina to the Gina 6. He's joined us many times over the years. I was just with you, Jordan, in New Orleans at Netroots Nation, where you moderate a panel on Hurricane Katrina 20 years later. Can you speak now about the aftermath? Talk about what was happening then, from the complete lack of FEMA preparedness or the city's preparedness to climate change, to what happened to this population where more than, well, close to 2,000 people died and 100,000 were evacuated.
Thank you, Amy. And sitting here in this chair, I think about all the people that aren't in this chair, as you say, the people that were displaced, the people that were killed. New Orleans right now has a population of about 360,000. Pre-Katrina, it was about 480,000, and most of that is Black residents. The city has about 120,000 fewer Black residents than it did pre-Katrina. And that period right after the storm, it feels a lot like right now, the way right now we're feeling attacks on everything, on democracy, on the social safety net. That's how it felt after Katrina. We're facing the issues people face everywhere: housing, education, criminal justice, but it was like on hyperspeed. Overnight, you had 80% of the city's housing, unlivable. You had the entire public housing infrastructure shut down. Almost all the public housing was shut down, even that was undamaged. You had our free city hospital was closed down. The entire staff of the school system.
People who fled to the Superdome to take refuge were just abandoned there for 3 days. No one came to assist them. The roof came off. There was supplies like fresh bottled water locked up in like a holding area within there while people were going without food. It was absolutely bonkers.
It was fired overnight. 7,500 teachers, the largest union in the city, that union representing the teachers, ceased to be recognized. The schools were moved from control of the school board, so under electoral control, to a mostly charter system. You had the governor say, I'm sending in National Guard troops. They're locked and loaded. They've been trained to shoot to kill, and I expect they will. And the voices of especially Black New Orleanians were not heard. I know that you've lifted up voices like Norris Henderson, Monique Harden, Tracy Washington, Sonny Patterson, people that were on the front lines of this struggle, artists, organizers, scholars, incredible landscape.
Look at that. It's really blurry, but the reason why that's all shiny is because that's water.
Of people fighting for the city, and people won real victories in that struggle. And it's hard living in the city, but I've learned so much from the grassroots organizers on the front line that were fighting for justice for the city.
And Jordan, could you talk about...
I was only in 5th grade in 2005, so I'm learning about most of the brutality now that I'm older.
About what happened with the the federal funding that was given to New Orleans in the aftermath of Katrina, more than $140 billion, which is the largest post-disaster domestic recovery.
It was $193 billion in damages. So it's nowhere near enough. You're like $50 billion short.
Recovery effort in U.S. history. What happened to that funding?
You know, it felt in that period as if like the sky was filled with money. As you say, all this money that came from the government and also from people that were donating. It was like it flew over our heads and then got redirected. So we didn't actually get to, the people most in need didn't actually receive it. So much of that money went to the Bush cronies like Kellogg, Brown and Root, and Halliburton. Of the 25 nonprofits that received the most money for Gulf Coast aid, half of them were based outside of the Gulf Coast. There was all of people giving money, the government giving money. If you look at the Louisiana Road Home Program, which was state administered and federally funded, one of the biggest sources of funding, it just went to homeowners, which were certainly in need, but what about renters? What about the homeless? And even among homeowners, white homeowners got 35% more aid on average than black homeowners. So the people most in need.
The least talked about is this racist standoff that was on this bridge. What was the name of that? Because there was a... Well, I don't want to watch Frontlines because that... Can I show this on the... I don't know.
Study, New Orleans ranked 5th in the country's 20 most gentrified cities. For many, the cost of living has surpassed the rate of pay, and the disparities and disadvantages were made even worse after Hurricane Katrina. Tonight, we discuss how progress came at the expense of some lifelong New Orleanians. Here's part 1 of episode 5 of Follow the Line. Hurricane Katrina opened New Orleans up to become one of the most intensely gentrified cities in America.
It was a beautiful neighborhood, but since the storm, all the ones that was renting is not here anymore.
But even before the storm hit, New Orleans was facing an affordable housing crisis.
Right before Hurricane Katrina, we had something like 100,000 renters, African-American renters.
Residents who lived in low-wage households then spent most of their money on housing. With the storm impacting a large portion of the city's most vulnerable communities, it made finding affordable housing in the aftermath a challenge.
We somehow, though, managed to create a worse housing system than we had pre-Katrina. How so? More vulnerability, more housing insecurity.
And more opportunity to further segregate the city.
The gentrification is only popping.
Before Katrina, you could get a house around here for $200,000, and that was expensive. But now everything is full and up.
Gentrification process is already pricing us out.
I just want to see New Orleans stay New Orleans.
Gentrification has swept across America. From Brooklyn, New York to Oakland, California, communities that were historically black have made a dramatic shift in demographics across the board. New Orleans is no different, and Katrina sped up that process.
They should never have torn it down. It was a nice place to live. My concerns are if I'm going to be able to be one of the ones, because I'm on disability.
In a city of majority renters, prior to the storm, those hoping to return home say they found themselves shut out or facing housing costs that were out of reach.
That we missed an opportunity post-Katrina because there was no comprehensive plan about how we would ensure that renters had housing options. And instead, we spent the money to build up neighborhoods that were already gentrifying without protecting long-term residents.
Residents like Zena Moses, a self-proclaimed homegrown New Orleanian who says moving back to the city after the storm was troubling, now staying in New Orleans is presenting even more of a challenge.
When I was trying to find a place, it was just, okay, I'm on assistance, you know. That have a stigma all by itself. You know, people just like, I don't want to rent to anybody with a voucher. So I'm like, well, look, I have money saved. It shouldn't be as hard for me to find because a lot of people in my position don't even have any savings. So I should be able to find something. Month 1 passed, month 2 passed. Now I'm sweating bricks like, okay, I can't, you know, no one's willing to accept a voucher. The cost of living is double at this point, you know, and my income hasn't doubled. I've been doing music for 17 years, so that itself has an income stamina. My money kind of comes based on what the tourism is doing, and being a single mom, I don't have the resources, so to say, to really pay the top-notch rent that was really being offered after Katrina.
Stories like Zena's, unfortunately, aren't unique for some lifelong New Orleanians. Before the storm, renters with severe housing cost burden stood at 23% in New Orleans. In 2022, it spiked to 35%, and a city where the median income only nudged a couple $1,000s over the past few years.
We're just not put in position that we don't have a even fighting playing field to compete with this.
But there is a contingent of homeowners who do have the resources, and they found Hurricane Katrina to be the perfect housing opportunity.
Instead of gentrification, I see myself as like an artification. We're the first wave of ruining a neighborhood.
What's the trend do you think is happening in this area? Because we're on St. Claude right now.
Yep, people having come starting to move in.
St. Roch and St. Claude are just two areas that not only altered physically post-Katrina, but economically.
This area is trending upwards in terms of income. Wow, oh, there's even greater amounts of homeowners. Oh, wow, this is a great place to open a new coffee shop. It's a great place to put a new grocery store.
Right.
Because they see where it's going. This is not the St. Claude from back in the day.
And it isn't the only community actively gentrifying in New Orleans. Neighborhoods like Treme, Central City, the 7th Ward, and the Irish Channel are just some of the 13 neighborhoods undergoing gentrification, according to a study released in 2020.
I don't think it's changing in a way that is most beneficial to the poor.
So these are neighborhoods that were historically undervalued. They were majority black neighborhoods. They were neighborhoods like the ones near the port. They were neighborhoods that we call now the Sliver by the River, which have become some of the hottest neighborhoods in the city because they didn't flood during Katrina. When that happened, most of them were majority black, but those land values and home values and rents doubled and tripled, and they became white neighborhoods almost overnight.
The influx of investment led to a rise in property values, and just this year, we learned how that rise could cost all of us.
We need something to be done to stop this bleeding that's happening in our community.
There was an uproar when homeowners across the city received their property tax bill. The citywide assessment of New Orleans property values showed the total value of city properties increased by 23% since the latest assessment in 2019, which could potentially make residents even more housing insecure.
Short-term rentals have been buying up the people who are buying up these houses in the inner city and the mid-city areas are buying them and renovating them. Okay, so those affect the values of those neighborhoods.
America has been bred and reared off of this. They're used to letting people develop a land, develop a system in that land, and they come in, swipe that land. So it has happened from city to city, it has happened from state to state, and now it's happening from neighborhood to neighborhood right here at home.
In part 2 of episode 5, we explore the origin story of gentrification and why some communities are seeing that influx of investment while others are not.
What is this? U.S. blocks Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and 80 other officials from United Nations annual meeting in New York. Their visas were revoked? Yeah, that's against international law. The United Nations is well, it was the US that blocked it, but wow. Marco Rubio. Unbelievable. Well, they won't even let children who need surgery or medical treatment in general into the United States anymore because of Marco Rubio. So what's to stop him from overstepping when it comes to diplomats? This is the latest step by Donald Trump's administration to target Palestinians with visa restrictions and follows the suspension of a program to allow injured children from Gaza to receive treatment in the U.S. See? God damn. We must consistently repudiate terrorism and end incitement to terrorism in education, as required by U.S. law and promised by the PLO. That's so fucking racist. We must repudiate terrorism? They're diplomats. They're Palestinian diplomats. The fuck? Palestinian Authority expressed its deep regret and astonishment at the visa decision, calling it a violation of U.S. commitments. Yep. State of Palestine is an observer member of the UN, meaning it can speak at meetings but not vote on resolutions. Sorry, I know you're watching stuff about Hurricane Katrina. I just thought your notification would like to know. No, yeah, absolutely. I do daily Gaza updates. I try to stay on top of the resistance reports, and there is no such thing as like mainstream news on Gaza. So or the West Bank for that matter. Like the United States has been silent about American citizens being killed in the West Bank. Straight up lynching, you know? Anyway. I'm trying to find this one note on... There's this one specific thing that happened where people were trying to cross a bridge into this other community, and they would not let them. Yeah, not the bridge that collapsed, no. This was a perfectly functional bridge into another community, a largely white community, mind you. Oof. Over 700 bodies recovered in New Orleans by October 23rd, 2005. How do I enable bits? looking it up. Oh, I have to be affiliate. Not quite there yet. I think I need... What do I need for that? I think it's like 5 continuous chatters. Or 5 concurrent chatters. Yeah, there's a whole documentary on, there's evidence that many prisoners were abandoned in their cells during the storm while the guards sought shelter. Hundreds of prisoners were later registered as, quote, unaccounted for. Damn, look at this bridge. Not a great quality photo. Oof. The Danziger Bridge shooting? What? There was shooting going on? There was sniping going on? Several shootings occurred between police and New Orleans residents, and some involving police misconduct, including an accident or an incident where police officers killed 2 unarmed civilians and seriously injured 4 others at Danziger Bridge. None of them had committed any crime. Well, fucking give me a map of New Orleans. Got me looking at bridge names. Yep, I stream every day. That's a long ass bridge across Lake Pontchartrain. Alright. Take care. I'll catch you on the next one, Kaz. I'll be gaming tomorrow. Peace. I'll just be here looking at bridges.
About Hurricane Katrina for you. So I want to go ahead and introduce you to meteorologist Jeffrey Medlin. Jeffrey, how are you doing
Thomas,
today?
Good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's good that you're here. Really appreciate you being here. And if anybody in the Mobile area has followed weather closely at all, really in the last 20 to 30 years plus, they probably come across your name because you were the meteorologist in charge for quite some time for the National Weather Service in Mobile. But you've also had a multitude of other roles, even within the National Weather Service.
Yes, I came to Mobile in 1994 as the station's first science and operations officer after our modernization.
Okay.
And that was for 20 years. And then eventually, well, I was on a 5-year plan, but 20 years later, I became the meteorologist in charge for 8 years. And I've been in 5 other states across the United States.
Okay, so I think it's fair to say that you have a vast experience when it comes to working within the Weather Service, and a lot of that experience, or some of that experience, comes back to 2005. And I wanted to bring you in because I wanted to speak with you about Hurricane Katrina, because you played a very pivotal role when it came to Katrina.
Yeah, that's correct, Thomas. You know, first of all, Katrina was obviously a devastating weather event that our country will never forget, not just this area. And, you know, the thing about Katrina was that in the modern era, we had not really experienced anything like that in a long time, and especially here locally, with the amount of tools that we had and the newly spun up National Weather Service office in Mobile.
Okay, and then what was your role in 2005 when Katrina came in?
My role in 2005 is I was the science and operations officer, and we were fully prepared for the possibility that Katrina could bring the communications down either at our office or the Weather Service in New Orleans, or Slidell, if you will. And my role was commanding our office operations until the dreaded phone call was received.
Okay.
The call that actually said, you are now both the National Weather Service in New Orleans and Mobile.
Okay, so I think a lot of people at home probably don't realize that for an extended period of time, the National Weather Service in Mobile was also the National Weather Service in New Orleans.
That is absolutely correct. In fact, for 21 days.
Okay.
It was the bridge to Gretna. That's what it was. Sorry, I was worried about 60 minutes doing it. Copyright sting on me. Bridge to...
There are some reports that one of the routes being used to make a hasty retreat after the storm was blocked by police officers guarding a key bridge that led to higher ground. Kelly Cobier.
That led to a white community, a largely upper middle class white community.
Come on, join us.
There's buses waiting for us. All we have to do is walk across the bridge.
This was the lifeline to dry ground, the Crescent City Connection, a crucial escape route out of a flooded New Orleans plagued by looters across the Mississippi River to the small city of Gretna. But Gretna police cars blocked their way, and witnesses say that officers forced them back, firing warning shots in the air.
And all of a sudden there's shooting. And we've been hearing shooting constantly. So that wasn't so unique, but it was so close. And everyone starts running back towards us, yelling, the police are shooting at us. And Lori Beth and I are thinking, this doesn't make sense.
It's a mistake.
Yeah. Why would the police shoot at us?
We had no more to offer here than they did in New Orleans. We did not have food. We did not have water. We did not have shelters here.
Gretna's chief of police makes no apologies. He says this city was closed down before the storm. 4,000 residents evacuated, and there were fears the looting would spread.
My job and responsibility to this community is to make sure that it's safe, the people and their property are safe in this community.
And their property are safe. Why would people searching for higher ground be... Why would your property be at risk? These are your neighbors, you know?
Whether out of fear or a misunderstanding, the result was the same. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of evacuees trapped in a city that was drowning.
We don't know to this day if people died because of a decision not to lend help and aid to a neighboring parish.
The Gretna police chief stands by his decision, which was made with the Bridge Police and officers from Jefferson Parish. As far as those reports of officers shooting in the air, he promises an investigation. Kelly Kobiella, CBS News, New York.
I'm going to leave it there. I'll catch y'all on the flip side. If you want to support the channel, like the video, and subscribe. And I will see you guys next time. Peace out.